All right, so I'm going to bring Yarg up to the stage from CanadaRIC.com. He's going to give a little bit of background about what the real estate club that he runs is all about. So Yarg, please come on up. Give Yarg a big hand.
I guess you can hear me, right? Hello, everybody. Hello. I hope you will understand my accent, but I don't really care about that because, you know, if a migrant can do it, so can you, right?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right. There you go. So I have a couple questions, guys. Who is the beginner investor or never done any deals? Can you raise your hand? I'm not going to do the censorships or, you know, taxman guy stuff, but we would like to find it out, you know, who is coming on the events, right? Who's actively investing now in Canada? Perfect, thank you much. And who is teaching? Who is already successful enough to teach other investors? Can you raise your hand? Charlie, come on. Raise your hand. Doesn't matter what, just raise the hand, okay, and say yes, right? Okay, anyway, thank you very much. Canada Real Estate Investors Club, which website is CanadaRIC.com. The primary goal is very, very simple. It's run by investors for investors, and our goal is to allow you to interact with other investors which are successful, have done it, they are thinking about doing them, and supporting each other. How neat is it? Oh, come on. Oh, my accent. How good is it, right?
Very good.
Do you have to pay anything?
Yes.
Bullshit, no. With all due respect, sorry. We're recording, but that's okay. Our goal is very simple. There is many people which are thinking about real estate investing, but they have never stepped over of that bridge, all that barrier, which are focusing over saturating with the analysis, you know, analysis paralysis and everything. Our goal is very, very simple. It's help you to get out and start doing real estate deals, right? Okay. Yes, we want to support our organizations. Yes, we have a different kind of memberships. We have, what is the most important thing for you to understand is, we are making due diligence on every mentor, every speaker, every person who is answering to any questions which you may ask. Canada-wide, not Calgary. Okay? We have mentors like Tim, like Shirley, like our speaker, right, Mike, like Greg. We fading out those guys which are pretending to be investors. We are fading those guys which they bullshitting about what they have done in real estate, and there are many of them. Trust me, there are so many of them. And one of the things which I would like to encourage, I don't want to waste too much time because that's Phoenix Real Estate Investing event. Just come, have a look, visit Canada REIC, just mention the name, and you will, if you will be associated with that organization, we promise you one thing. Any question which you will have, we will answer. We have presentations like Mike's presentations, like Shirley presentations, like 10 presentations for 8 years. We do archive, and you see it, we're recording everything even today. Okay, how neat is it to go and see it, presentations, what was happening 8 years ago, when there was crisis. Can we repeat the same situation, whatever is happening now? Definitely. You want to learn about tax liens and these? There's a Mike's presentation there too, right? Thank you very much, and I'm not going to waste your time.
Canada RIC too much, but I will say this: I wouldn't be where I am today because of the network that I've gained through being on that club and meeting the people that are involved with it. So, here's my fancy first slide. Come on, Eric,
just click it.
There we go. So, a little bit about me. I've been in real estate, unfortunately not for 25 years like Mike, but I'm also a lot younger, so that's a great benefit. I got
no, you're not.
Okay. So I started with foreclosures here in Calgary back 5 years ago. I bought a foreclosure, did some renovations on it, and then I started moving on to other strategies like rent to own, and quite frankly, I hated it. I didn't like rent to own one bit. I worked in it for a while, and it just wasn't for me. I wasn't passionate about it, but don't get me wrong here, it's a great strategy. I know investors out there, one in Edmonton specifically, and a few here in Calgary, that's all they do. It's a strategy that works. It's a great strategy. It just wasn't for me. I really wasn't passionate about it. So I spent a lot of time and money going out there and networking and meeting other investors like Mike Wolf and Yara from CanadaRIC.com. And I started kind of learning the hard way, to be honest with you, how other investors do the other strategies. I sort of picked their brains and kind of learned how they did what they did and all the other strategies in real estate just over time by kind of going and networking with them and just hanging out with them a lot and going to all of Mike Wolf's events. So I used private financing for my first real estate deal. I used that to fund the renovations. And I started to realize that other investors kind of had that same sort of need. And I started to help other investors kind of source the funds that they were looking for their real estate deals. And I learned the tax liens and deeds course, like Mike mentioned, they teach in Houston. After I went to Mike's event, the first little seminar, and I kind of started to do some research about tax liens and deeds, and I decided, I went home, thought about it, and I thought, you know what, Mike Wolf's actually a pretty cool guy after all. I think I should probably take his course in Houston. So I pulled the trigger, went and did that, and I learned everything there is to know about tax liens and deeds in the US from Mike. And while I was working on tax liens and deeds there, excuse me, I hate talking about myself, so I'd rather talk about the real estate, so I've got a couple notes here. And after doing that networking and learning what Mike was doing, I was able to execute on some other strategies after picking the brains of those people, like I said, such as agreement for sale and finding rent-owned clients for other people, because I didn't want to manage it. You have to manage rent-owned clients, and that wasn't something I was too excited about. And lending, consulting, finding that financing for other investors. And while I was working on tax liens and deeds, and I was doing sort of the whole 9 yards of a reno, there's sort of the basic and the middle and the high end. I went from the basic project, I went right from there, right to the top end, and did everything in that house, replaced everything, the roof, we did custom cabinets, granite, the whole 9 yards. And then I decided that, you know what, I'm sick of living in a renovation, because that's what it's. So I had enough of the dust and the dirt, so I didn't want to do that anymore. But it was a great way to save some money on not paying those taxes. I was able to put a lot more money in my pocket as a result of doing that. It's not for everybody. Living in a long-standing reno, it was over a year that I was in that house. It's not for everybody. It was stressful for me. So if you're going to do that and want to avoid those capital gains, talk to your wife, talk to your spouse, talk to your girlfriend, because it might end that relationship if it doesn't go well. So make sure that everybody's on board and they know they're going to have to deal with that drywall dust for 6 to 8 months. And drywall dust, to me, is the worst substance known to man. It gets in everything, under everything, whether you like it or not. It's like an unstoppable force in life. That's what drywall dust is to me. I can't stand it. And I'm also a telecommunications engineer. I have a career that I love. I'm one of the fortunate ones. I don't necessarily want to do real estate to stop doing that, to not do what I do during the day. The only reason I mention that is to illustrate the fact that you can have a career that you love and have a successful real estate business as well. So here's my shortest disclaimer ever. As Mike alluded to, you have to ask the accountant the tax questions, ask the lawyer the legal questions. I'm not a lawyer, an accountant, or a realtor. I'm not a mortgage broker. I'm a sophisticated real estate investor, and I've got a lot of great ideas and opinions that can help you out be successful in real estate too. All the numbers I'm going to go through here are for illustration purposes only. They're not real houses in Calgary or anything like that, or Houston, which are for reference. None of the statements I'm making here fall into any of those categories, because this is on camera. I don't want to get in trouble for saying, hey, you should open up an LLC in the US or open a C Corp. So the first thing here, private financing in real estate, also known as hard money lending. These terms are really interchangeable. You'll hear one sometimes and sometimes hear the other. So in everybody's real estate investing career, who owns more than 5 properties in the room? Put up your hand. Nobody? Okay, we've got 2 in the back there. So there's a point in every investor's career where the bank eventually is going to start saying no to you, that your debt ratio is too high, these sorts of things. They don't want to loan you any more money. So you're going to run out of credit because the bank doesn't like your debt ratio anymore. Or maybe you can still qualify for a loan, but you don't have the down payment anymore. You run out of the cash to put down the down payments. Often, you're going to run out of both. To be honest, this is what happens to people generally more often than one or the other. So what are you going to do next? You have to start what I like to call a private market, and what that means is private investors. So what exactly is the private market? Well, that is anybody out there, like Mike alluded to when he talked about doctors and lawyers, that's got money to lend on real estate because they're getting crappy returns in their other investments. They're not financially regulated, so the best thing about that is that you get really flexible terms. They don't have to jump through the same hoops to get private financing that you do with the banks. And that's going to give you a lot more flexibility and make you a lot more money. So they're not a bank or credit union. Again, like Mike alluded to this very astutely, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and successful business owners. People own construction companies, people own engineering companies. As an example, one of my personal hard money lenders, he owns a very successful engineering firm. And he's got tons of money to lend out. Talk to me more about that later. If you're interested, he'll lend out to you as well. And they've got capital sitting in their other investments, mutual funds, and all these things. GICs. Does anybody know what the GIC rate is right now? I haven't even checked because I would never do it. Does anybody know?
0.8.
2.8 in a GIC?
Yeah, for 1 year term grant.
Really?
Yeah.
That's actually not too bad. It must have gone up a little bit.
1.8, is that what you said?
Where are you going to get that from? I'm even curious. I still wouldn't do it. That's a hell of a rate.
He said 0.8.
0.8.
Oh, 0.8. I thought he said 10.8.
New course.
All right, I don't have to go get a GIC. I'm going to sleep better. So these folks here would love to get a better return on their money. They're begging for it. And a lot of them, in fact, have lost a bunch of money. They lost 30% in their mutual funds and investments in the equity crash in 2008. So it's your job as real estate investors to show them how real estate is the best financial vehicle in the world to make them money. And how they can lend you money secured against real estate that's turned in the way of mortgages, so you can buy homes, refinance existing properties, so you can buy a boat. I wouldn't suggest doing that. Put it into some more real estate. So it's your job to educate them and show them how they can work with you and make a better return. So how does this work exactly? First and foremost, you're going to give them a higher than average return, way better than that GIC that he mentioned. Make it a win-win for your lender. Because you're going to make money, they're going to make money. That's just how this game works. Way better rates than you're going to get than a bank and credit union, especially if it's sitting in a savings account. I'm sure there's people out there with a lot of money getting 0.25% interest in their savings account. They should be doing real estate. So you're going to offer real estate security through mortgages, promissory notes, caveat against property, and blanket mortgages. We'll get into that a little bit if nobody knows what that means. We're going to offer flexible terms to that lender. So if they want to park their money for a year, there's options for that. If they want to park their money for 6 months, there's options for that. If they want to lend out a bank mortgage, similar to a bank mortgage, they want a 10-year term, they want to park their money for 5 years, you can do that too. You can get a mortgage at the same sort of terms as the bank, 5, 10, 15 years as well. You're going to offer interest rate that's guaranteed. It's not going to be like the stock market, bouncing up and down like yo-yo all the time. You're going to give them a rate they can count on month after month, year after year if it's a longer term. And you pay an upfront fee to that investor, but not always, and I'll get into that in a minute. And generally you're going to pay them a fee upfront as well. You're going to put a minimum down payment on a brand new mortgage, so if it's a first mortgage, you're going to put down 20% or greater to give that investor really good security. And 85% loan value or better. So the banks require 80% for investment purposes. Some investors do go up to 85% on second mortgages and things like that. So what are the benefits to me as an investor exactly? How does this help me as an investor do more deals? Well, there's a ton of them, so we'll go over them really quick. No official credit check. When you go into a bank, talk to your mortgage broker, they're going to pull a hard hit to your credit. Every time you do that, in a short period of time, whether you're going for a Home Depot credit card or you're getting a car loan, whatever it is, those are considered hard hits to your credit. Each time you do that, it actually drops your credit score a little bit. A lot of people aren't aware of that. So you can use your own Equifax credit report, which you should pull every year anyways. I highly recommend you do that. Sometimes the credit sources, they screw things up and your score could be lower than it should be. You can use your own credit report from private market funds most of the time. No debt ratio calculation. So that brick wall, the bank's going to put down and say, no, you can't own more than 5 properties. You don't make enough money. Too bad, so sad. Private market, you don't need to worry about that. No income statements to be involved, usually. They don't need to see your T4s. They don't care how much money you make. And if you want to list in a company, you don't need to see your T1 general for your corporation, that sort of thing. They don't need to see that in most cases. You're going to get a quick close in your deal because of all those hoops. You don't need to jump through them anymore. If you got a private lender in your back pocket, he's got money ready to go. You show him a property, he likes it, it's done. It can be done in 2 days, let alone 2 weeks, which usually is for bank financing. And for project financing or rental or something like this, you can get interest-only payments. You get a bank mortgage, unless you're going to do home equity line of credit. Those have gotten more complicated as of late because the bank tweaked the rules a little bit. You can get interest-only payments, so that's going to lower your cost per month, so it's going to drive your profits up if you're doing a renovation as an example. And you can buy as many of these deals as you want because you're not going to run it at brick wall of finance. You keep doing this again and again and again as long as you've got the down payment dollars to do it. And you can convert that private money to bank financing later on because let's say you buy an apartment building, it's a sixplex. It's got 2 vacant units, it's not cash flowing very well right now, it needs some renovations. The bank would never give you a mortgage on that. But if you get private money, get a mortgage, fix it up, put the tenants in place so now the thing's fully rented out, the bank's going to go look at that and go, you know what, that is a good deal now. I will give you a mortgage on that. You can replace the private money with bank financing. More benefits to you as investors. So you can borrow up to 85% loan value in some cases again. You get mortgage plus renovations as well. Does anybody know what a purchase plus is? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3 people. All right. So at a bank, what you can do is you can go and say, I want to buy this property, Mr. Banker, it's $300,000, but I want to put $50,000 in renovations into this property. So you can get a mortgage for the whole $350,000 and roll that renovation cost into your payments. So that's possible with a bank mortgage. You can also do this in private market. And you can extend that term if you have a 1-year term with the loan. You're paying those fees up front that I mentioned in most cases. And usually, most private lending is open term. So you can pay back that loan whenever you want, generally with no penalty, sometimes 3 months interest. Has anybody ever had to pay an IRD or interest rate differential in the room? Raise your hand. Anybody ever had to do that? Greg's had to do it, one more? Well, I've had to do it, and it sucks. Let me tell you why. Because if you have a mortgage at 3.5%, it's a closed mortgage for 5 years, you've agreed, committed to the bank that you're going to pay that mortgage for that 5-year term. You break it early, you sever that contract, they're going to charge you either 3 months interest, or if interest rates go down, say from 3.5% to 2.5%, that bank's lost money. They can't lend that money out that they gave you the mortgage for at 3.5% anymore, so they can only lend it out 2.5%. They're going to take that loss and put it in you. And that happened to me once. Believe me, it's not fun. So in the private market, that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as an IRD. So let's go through a couple examples real quick. We've got a $100,000 loan. We're going to put 20% down, like you would for any investment property. We're going to have 8% interest. That's pretty typical in a first mortgage. Could be a little less, a little more. 1-year term, 2% fee, $2,000. Your interest payment on this property is going to be $533 a month. That's a lot lower than paying principal and interest if you have a traditional bank mortgage. So this fee that I've been talking about, why do they charge that? Quite frankly, these people have got money. They'd rather be driving a sports car down the Las Vegas freeway or riding their boat around on the Shuswap Lake in BC than have to vet 100 deals every month. So they want to charge this minimum fee up front, plus whatever interest you have for the months that you have the loan for, so they're going to get a guaranteed minimum return. And they're pretty happy having to vet another deal because they got this money up front. So that's the reason why they charge those fees. Good day to be the guy that has all the money. So does this work for cash flow? So Mike mentioned the price of the properties in the US and the price of the properties in Kansas. So let's say this property is located in Houston, Texas, and it's $100,000. You can rent it out for $1,000 a month. It's in a bit of a nicer area. So that $10,000 minus the $533 for interest, $467 a month. Outside of taxes and management, management companies in the US usually they charge flat fees. They don't charge 10% of your rent like they do here in Canada in a lot of cases. So after your taxes and management of $150, you take that off of there. Net cash flow is $317 a month. Does people think that? Anybody in the room think that's good cash flow? Is that decent?
Yep.
Pretty good. And all that with no credit check, no debt ratio to worry about. And you can buy as many of these suckers as you've got down payment dollars to deal with. So second example, second mortgage. Property, you're going to use as security. This could be your personal residence. This could be another property, rental property you've owned for a few years. You've had it for a while, so the current balance is $300,000. Loan you need is $50K. You're going to take the $50K and do a reno, or you're going to put it as a down payment for another house. So loan to value after that, you take your $350, you add the $50,000. $350 divided by 500, that's your loan to value of 70%. Now that's pretty safe for any investor out there because the banks only require you to put 20% down. This is like a 30% down loan. So if worst case scenario, you had to foreclose on that property, you'd be able to sell it very safely and get your money back. And if there's a first mortgage on it, generally the bank's going to take that property back and they pay you out because they don't want to lose that property. So this is a 12% interest rate. That's a pretty typical starting point for second mortgages. You're going to have a 1-year term because you're going to use this for a project. You're going to pay 2.5% fees, $1,250. Now $1,250 is paid up front, so it's not part of your monthly interest payment. So on this $50K, it's $500 a month. So you're going to have legal fees and registering the mortgage, land titles. You got to pay that when you buy with the bank. You got to pay that when you buy through the private market. You can't avoid that. You're also going to need an appraisal to make sure that the investor is comfortable that it's actually worth $500,000. So I want to talk about a strategy here for other investors or yourselves once you've got some properties in your portfolio and you've had them for a few years and you've paid those properties down and you want to start leveraging that equity out to buy more properties and you can continue on. So we've got an investment here with 5 properties. Each of these properties, $80,000 in equity, total of $400,000. So how much, people in the room, do you think you could borrow against that $400,000? Just throw out a number. How much do you think you can borrow against that $400,000? So that's the total amount of equity is $400K. How much do you think you can borrow out of that? Pretty safely.
$275.
$275? That's pretty close. My opinion here, very easily you can borrow $200,000. And Steve's right, you probably could get $275, but any investor on earth is going to understand this because it's a 50% loan to value. So is the market ever going to drop 50% in Canada? Not very likely. It did in Vegas, they were way overbuilt. That's a rarity. It didn't drop 50% in Calgary, I don't even think it dropped a total of 30% in 2008 during the crash. So he's going to get a blanket mortgage and you're going to write that against all 5 of those properties. So in the event of a default, you get to foreclose on all 5 of those properties. So that borrower, he's got a real incentive. He's owned these properties, worked real hard to build a portfolio. He doesn't want to lose those 5 properties. He's going to pay you month after month on time or early, every time. And in the unlikely event he does default, you can foreclose on that, all those 5 properties, and the bank can give you a check and pay out your investment, or you might end up owning all 5 of those properties, which is a great deal for the lender in the event of a default. So you're very secure. You can get definitely more than that out of that $400,000. Excuse me, but any investor in the world is going to understand 50% loan to value is a very secure loan. So some common questions. If anybody has any questions, by all means, please put up your hand or shout it out. Stop me. I want this to be interactive, just like Mike. I don't want to just talk. I like to answer questions. So what if the investor wants to close term? That's the type of guy who wants to park their money for a year guaranteed. Well, you know what? If it suits your deal, why not give it to them? The worst you're going to have is paying 3 months interest because, again, there's no IRD. So what are normal interest rates? Well, remember how I said a little bit earlier you're going to give them a higher than average return on their investment. So typically what that's going to mean is you're going to pay them roughly double what the banks are lending out at in the bank mortgage market. So on a first mortgage, that's about between 6 and 9%, and on a second mortgage, that's between about 12 and 20%. So what are the normal fees that they charge up front? Well, that runs anywhere between 2 and 6%. And of course, all this is negotiable. When you're going to shop for a mortgage, you're going to negotiate on price. You're going to make an offer on a property, you negotiate on price. The private market is no different. You might have to go through a couple of private lenders to find something that matches your deal. And that's just a matter of shopping it around. So what's the normal term for project financing? Doing a rent-to-own or a renovation or whatever it's going to be, usually 6 to 12 months. But again, you can get longer terms if there's people out there who want to park their money for a long time. You can get a 10-year mortgage in the private market. It happens all the time. So I want to talk about a strategy here that works really well for people who have a little bit larger amount of capital to play with, and they want high returns on a shorter term. And this is called bridge loans. So they're very lucrative to get a high return on a shorter term. And here's sort of the reasons why. The scenarios that work really good for these types of people is, has everybody ever heard of a bridge loan, first of all, before we get too much in this? All right, so anybody's ever bought a house, moved out of their house, and moved into the next house, sort of 3 days early so you can clean the place before the next guy moves in, the bank would have given them a bridge loan to bridge that gap in the financing before you technically had the money from the closing date and the check is sent over to your lawyer to pay off your last mortgage. So that's what a bridge loan is in the regular world. But in the investment world, there's going to be builders out there that they just finished this house, it's ready to go, they're about to put it up for sale, and they see this piece of land that's vacant down the block. And they want to jump on that piece of land because it's $50,000 below market value, and they don't want the dealer, the builder up the block to scoop that deal from them. So they want to get their crew over there, moved over there, break ground, and get started on that project, but they don't have the money for this one. So the bank's not going to give them the money until they sell this house because their credit won't support it. So they can use a bridge loan to bridge one project to the next project for about 60 to 90 days. That's about the typical term for a bridge loan. Could even be shorter in some situations. To buy that next property, get started on it, so he doesn't lose out on it. And what the security is going to be for you as a lender is this brand new house he just built. So you're going to have really good security. It's a brand new house. You didn't have to build it. If you happen to screw it up and you have to foreclose on that property, you got a brand new house and you can sell. So this also works good for renovators. They just freshly renovated a property, they find that same killer deal down the block and they want to get started on that and jump on it before somebody else gets a hold of it. So they need that time between one project and the next, so they can put that freshly renovated property up for security to get the loan to buy that next property, to buy the next piece of land. So they're normally short term because they're very time sensitive. They're nervous about losing that deal. And this brand new house they just put up for sale, it's not going to take 6 months to sell. It's going to probably take 2 or 3 months. It's brand new, it's nice. So they're going to sell that, and they're going to be able to pay you out and for your loan, and they're willing to pay a high interest for that short period of time. The reason for paying that really high interest is because they're going to make $200,000, $150,000 in the next project, and that's the power of being able to do something now, pay a little bit more money, and do that next project as opposed to lose out on it. So in the unlikely event of a default, again, like I said, you can foreclose on the property, and you're going to have a brand new property you can take over and rent it out for premium rent if you want, because it's freshly renovated, so you're going to get good rents, or you can rent it out because it's brand new on the builder side. So you really have to know your numbers here. You have to take a look at what the builder owes on the property, what the renovator owns on the property. So if you had to foreclose, what that would look like. So what your profit's going to be, and whether the bank might be the one to give you the check, depending on how that's going to look in the worst case scenario. So these deals need a lot more capital because you're usually funding the full purchase of a house or the full purchase of land. I mean, in Calgary, a nice community, that could be 600 grand. So it's not something that everybody can do, but you do get higher rate of return and shorter terms. And again, they're time sensitive for the borrower, and that's important because you as a private lender, you can close quick. You're not going to make them jump through all those hoops. You're going to look at their brand new house, you're going to do your due diligence on it, and see it as good security. So you're going to be able to close that quicker, which suits the borrower's needs. And after the term, they sell that house number one, they're going to take that money and they're going to pay you out for the bridge loan, and they're going to get moving on to the next one. They're going to put bank financing on that sucker because bank financing is the cheapest. They're just doing this for the short term to get moved on to the next project. And they require a little more due diligence because you're looking at two things now. You're not just looking at the property, the brand new house that's going to be used as security. You're also looking at that builder or that renovator. Is this their first rodeo? Have they just built one house, or have they been doing this for 30 years? They built 600 homes. You want to see a track record for that guy or that renovator, because if they tell you 30 days and you're putting up all this cash and you're expecting to make this return, you don't want that to go longer because they didn't finish the reno or whatever the situation is. You want to make sure they're going to be able to perform. So you're going to be looking at their track record as much as you're going to be looking at the security. No interest rates for these can be 20% and up. That's about where they start, I would say, for a deal like this. I've seen them go as high as 38. I've heard people say you can't charge more than a certain amount. Please ask your accountant of what you can do with that, because there are government regulations for that. So what if you don't have cash to lend out? There's another way, and Mike sort of alluded to this a little bit, is you can use your RSPs to lend out on real estate transactions. And so people allowed in Canada take their money, transfer from one fund to the other, into what's called a self-directed RSP account, like Mike talked about. And because you're not doing withdrawal, you don't pay any taxes on it. These funds need to be managed by a fund management company. They're essentially like the clerk. They take the payments from whatever the loan's going to be, and they take the payment, they take the interest, they put it back into your RSP account. And one example of a company like that is Olympia Trust here in Calgary. They're a fund administrator for arms-length mortgages and self-directed accounts. I don't get paid to say that. It's just I know they're one of the biggest. They're one of the better ones. I know people have worked with them and they've had great success. You're going to need to pay that fund manager a flat fee every year to sort of manage the transactions for you. But the great thing about it is it's a flat rate fee. You're not paying a variable amount to that person every year. Yeah, sure.
Do you get taxed on your profit when it goes back into your account?
No, you don't. Well, you will. It's tax deferred like anything else with RSPs, but that profit goes directly back into your account. So the profit from interest or profit from the deal, if you're going to fund a deal, have it structured that way, goes directly back to your RSP account. So it's all tax deferred. You never avoid the taxes in life. The two things you can count on is death and taxes. You're going to pay it eventually, but you like to pay it at the end. You're retired and sort of throw it out.
Roughly, what is that annual?
It's under $500. I think it might even be. Mike might know. What's the living trust charge per year?
I think it's about $175, and then if you have a second product, it's half of that. If you have a third product, zero amount. So it's very little.
So the more accounts you have, the less you pay.
Yeah.
So there's the answer to that. I knew it was around $200. I didn't want to say that because it's recorded. I don't want to say anything that's not accurate. So what self-directed really mean? Well, you get to pick the investment. Unlike a mutual fund, they get to pick wherever the investments are going to go. You get to decide what you're going to loan it out on, whether it's going to be second mortgage, or whether it's going to be a first mortgage. You get to pick the terms, you get to pick the interest, you get to pick the fees, you get to pick the amortization rate, yeah?
So with my RSP, could I loan it to myself?
No, you can't do that. We'll get into
Okay.
that in just a second.
Bummer.
There is the one rule. I mean, you can't loan to yourself.
We were really
It's
on
It's too bad. If you could do that, it'd be great. But you get to be the bank here. You get to pick your rates, you get to pick your fees. Who doesn't want to be the bank? I mean, I sure do. So the one rule here, unfortunately, is it has to be what's called arm's length. And what that means, simply put, is you can't have a personal relationship, so you can't loan it to yourself. And you can't have a business relationship with the person that it's going to. So it can't be going to the borrower that you know on a personal basis or have an interest in, either through family or through business. So, for example, you can't loan it to Uncle John to finish his basement, or to your sister to go to Maui. You can't do that, unfortunately. It would be nice. But other than that one criteria, you can loan out that money in your RSPs on mortgages, bridge loans, and at whatever interest rate you feel comfortable with. Sometimes I like to say whatever interest rate you can get away with, but I caveat that with saying there is a maximum. And you want to also have this be win-win for your borrower, because you want them to do their project and do another project and do another project, so they can keep investing with you and giving you a good return on your money. So there's also no MER. Does anybody know what an MER is? Put up your hand. Nobody knows what that is? Come on, shout it out. What's an MER? Management expense ratio, exactly. What that is, for those other people in the room don't know what it is, you have a mutual fund, they're going to charge you a percentage of your savings every year, year after year, whether they lose your money or they make you money. That's a horrible system for you, the investor, to have to pay this fee when they're losing your money every year. So you don't have that with Olympia Trust and a self-directed RSP fund. You pay that flat 175 or even zero if you've got a number of accounts with them to have this facilitated for you. So again, the payments, like I said, they go right back into your account, so those profits, and they're going to go right back into your account, so you can't touch them. So the benefit to the borrower there is you're going to be able to give them really flexible terms. Say, I'm doing a project, Mr. Lender, I want to pay you yearly. Well, you can give them that. Or I want to pay you every 6 months. Well, you can do that. Because it doesn't matter to you anyways. You can't touch that money. You wouldn't take the money in your current RSP to go buy a television. You're going to pay tax on it. So you wouldn't do that now. You wouldn't do it with a self-directed fund either. So you can give very flexible terms to your borrowers, which is a great benefit to them. And it's for your target savings we're talking about here. And a bunch of people took a kicking back in 2008. So you're going to want to look on first mortgages or second mortgages or other real estate loans that are going to be very high security. So you might want to get a minimum 20% down. You might even want to be looking at 70%, depending on what your time horizon is for your RSPs. You might be willing to take a little bit more risk. Just depends. But you want to make sure you've got good security in that loan. In case you had to foreclose, you can sell that property and recoup your investment and lend it to somebody else who's a little bit more responsible, hopefully. So in the event of a default, again, you can take that property back, and you're going to be the first mortgage holder on that property. Or if you're in second position, does everybody know what second position means? Most people do. Okay, so if you're in second position and you have to foreclose, again, the bank can pay you up, and then that's simple and easy for you. You don't have to go to court. The bank's going to do it. So what the lender is going to expect from you, the borrower, if you're looking to source money from the private market. So they're going to want to see property details. They're going to want to know that it exists, that it's real. They want to see MLS listing if it's listed on MLS to do their comparables and everything else. And almost always you're going to need an appraisal. I say almost always because sometimes a lender might have a realtor in that area where the property happens to be, and they trust him and they know he knows his stuff, and they can look at the comps and say, yeah, you know what, I think that property is worth that much. But in most cases, they're going to want an appraisal. The reason for that is a lot of these people are not going to be in your local area. They could be in Vancouver, they could be in Montreal. They don't have an appraiser on the ground that they trust and they know. You're going to need to get an appraisal done by somebody and have proven to them that it's going to be a valid one. And how you do that is use an AACI approved appraiser, big long fancy title, Accredited Appraiser Canadian Institute. And what that means is it's an institute that's recognized across Canada. They've got the right credentials. They're going to follow best practices, make sure they're doing an appraisal that's done very well and it's going to give an accurate value. So they're going to be very comfortable with that, doesn't matter where they live. So the terms you're going to expect what interest you're looking to get, how long of a term you want, what your down payment's going to be, what fees you're expecting to pay. And of course, again, all these things are negotiable. You can negotiate all day long. Everything in real estate is negotiable. These rates, people are willing to move them around all the time. I was just going through it with, a little while ago looking for private financing for my projects. So some of these lenders, generally these people are going to be the guys with the lowest fees and lowest rates. That's that 6%, even 5%, the really low guys. They're going to actually want to see your income statement. They're going to want to see your T1 general. They're going to have you jump through a couple of hoops, like the bank would, because they want to make sure you got good credit. They want to make sure that you could pay the loan if something went sideways with your project. So because they're making you jump through those hoops, you're going to get way lower rates. But again, you don't have to deal with debt ratio calculations. They don't really care about that. They just want to see your income. This guy makes good money. He's got good credit. His credit score is 700. I'm pretty comfortable with loaning him my money. And again, you're going to want to see your credit report. You can pull your own credit report from Equifax, and they'll be more than happy to look at that. And there's two types of credit reports you can get from Equifax. There's one that shows your score, and there's one that shows your score and your history. They're going to want to see a detailed report that costs a little bit more money. I think it's about $45, and they can use that. So remember when I talked about Purchase Plus with the bank? Well, private guys will do this too. These are generally the guys that are going to lend it out at a higher rate. We'll go into that here in a second. So they'll finance up to 80% what's called the ARV, or after repair value. So that's the value of the house after it's been renovated. So they're going to require a 20% down payment on that after repair value. What it's going to be, what the value is going to be at first appreciation through the renovations. These types of lenders are going to charge you a way higher rate because these loans carry a lot higher risk. And we'll go into why. So here's the worst case scenario. You're halfway through the reno and then you die. Heaven forbid, but you could get hit by a bus, it could happen. The investor's going to take a look at that. Or you might be getting divorced and you can't get the project done, or a personal emergency happens and you've got to go fly home, whatever it is, to take care of a family member, you might not be able to complete that project. So then that house is now torn up. It might not have a toilet, it might not have windows in it, depending on the rental, what stage of the rental this is happening in. And it's currently unlivable. So now this property is worth less money than it was when you started, when you first bought it. So it's worth less than the first mortgage value. So the lender would then have two options. They can complete the renovations, they can keep the house, they can rent it out, or they can sell the house as well. Or number two, they can try and sell that property as is for a steep discount, and that, huge risk. They're not going to want to do that. Bad place to be. They're probably going to lose a portion of their investment, or a significant portion of it, because selling at that deep of a discount, they're not going to get their money back likely. So option number one takes additional capital. They got to fund the rental now. They got to complete that renovation cost, but they'd have a way higher chance of completing the project and getting their profits back. And as a bonus, they're going to get the profit from the renovation as well, and they didn't have to do all of the work. Of course, you have to have a team to do that. You have to have a renovation team that can go in and do that, or have access to one, know somebody who can do the work for you. Not everybody's willing to take over a half-baked renovation. If you're a doctor, as an example, and you lend out this money, you're not going to want to manage a rental crew and worry about that. You're in surgery and doing the doctor thing. That's not strategic to your goals at all. So they have to charge you this higher rate, shore up that risk factor, so in worst case scenario, they have to deal with all this stress. They're getting a higher return to do it. So these types of loans are more commonly referred to as hard money because they are way higher rates. Personally, I think they're the same, but some people will call the higher rate loans and higher risk loans hard money lending. So in my travels over the years, I have seen that many people have come to me and they're looking for things that don't fit the lending criteria. Often these people really, what they're looking for is a joint venture partner. They're not looking for a lender. They come to me with scenarios like, I need someone to put in the down payment and qualify, and I'm going to do all the work. We're going to find a rent-to-own tenant, we're going to put them in, I'm going to manage it and do all that stuff. I need someone to put in the down payment, I can qualify for the mortgage on a rental property. There's a few of these, I don't want to spend too much time on this stuff. And a few other combinations of this sort of stuff. They were looking for a joint venture partner, they really weren't looking for a lender. So I want to be very clear about this, that anytime you're going to have the security for the loan be the project property, or have the profits you're going to pay that other person from the sale of that property, the completion of that project, it's not a loan, it's a joint venture partnership. So that leads me into the next section, joint venture partnerships in real estate. Are there any other questions up until this point? Nothing? You have one? No? Okay. So, JVPs, lovingly called JVPs. So borrowing money from the private market is definitely going to help your real estate business. It's going to expand your capabilities. You're going to be able to buy more properties in less time, get more stuff closed in a shorter time frame. But it's not going to help you out if you don't fit that criteria. So some joint venture partnerships you could look into. So you find an amazing deal, and this might sound crazy, but this happens all the time. You find an amazing buy and hold property. You're willing to manage the property. You're going to take the phone calls when that toilet breaks at 2 in the morning because your other guy doesn't want to. Other investor's going to put in a down payment, and he's going to qualify for the mortgage. So who thinks that that's a great deal? That you find an awesome deal out there, and you can get somebody else to pay for everything, other than you having to manage the property. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? Yeah. There we go. All right. So other ways you can do it, you're going to bring the down payment, you're going to manage the property, they're going to qualify. Maybe you've hit that brick wall, and the bank's not going to give you any more credit, so you get the other guy to qualify. You've got the cash to put in a down payment. Why not do that with somebody else? You're going to qualify for the mortgage. You're going to fund the down payment for the renovation, and the other guy's you're going to qualify for the down payment. The other guy's going to put in the rental costs. So a lot of people out there, hey, I want to do rental, but I can't afford the mortgage, and I don't have the down payment. So you can do that with a partner. So when you put in the down payment funds for the renovation, the other guy, he's going to qualify. Yep.
So in this type of joint venture agreement, how would you structure the ownership percentages? Would that be set to the person?
Yeah, it would be. So I like to always suggest 50-50. Again, I go back to win-win. So even if it's 3 partners, 33.33%, it's really easy to understand what I'm putting in, I get an equal share of what I'm getting out. And for a lot of people, their credit's a big deal. So if they're going to qualify, and you're going to put in the down payment, and you're going to do the rental as an example, why not give them 50% of the deal? Because hey, they're putting up their credit. That's the thing you don't have. So usually you're going to structure that JV agreement to say 50-50%. There's circumstances where you may not, and I'll get to that in a minute, but that's usually what the joint venture agreement would say is your responsibilities, your share of the profits, and what you're doing, really, what the deal's going to be, and how you're going to structure that, and what your plans are for the deal now and in the future. Great question. So the possibilities here really are endless. There's 100 ways you can structure this stuff. So you got to get creative and start looking at a real estate deal as individual components that you're going to bring to the table. Somebody's got to qualify. Somebody's got to pay the down payment. Somebody's going to manage that property if it's a rental or if it's a rent-to-own. Somebody's got to babysit that tenant buyer. Somebody's got to fund the renovation work if it's a renovation project. Even if it's buy and hold, a lot of times you got to paint the place, you got to put a new trim, you got to replace some stuff. Even if it's a rental, if you've got a broken fridge, that rentals are unavoidable in real estate. Or you're going to use the equity in your property or properties to source private financing. Now that's not something that's going to be in every deal, but that's something that's going to be a huge benefit to the partnership if somebody's going to bring that in, because they're bringing cash from their other properties and they're using leverage to get more real estate. So the profits for JVP are of course negotiable, but like I said, I really suggest 50-50% if there's 2 partners, because it's easy to understand what I'm going to get. Because you don't want to be 6 months into the project and go, hey, you know what, I've done more work, I want 55% or I want 70% now. You want to make sure that's well documented. But if the deal's amazing and you're going to make a ton of money and you're happy with that, then do the deal. It's way better to take 30% or even 20% of a deal that you close as opposed to a deal that you never do. Does that make sense to everybody? Perfect. You also consider using multiple partners again, split that equally through everybody wherever possible to structure something that everybody understands is a win-win. So it's easy to see why I'm making the money for what I'm putting in and why the next guy's making the money for what he's putting in. So real estate joint ventures, just like any other relationship in life, unfortunately, they don't last forever. I'm not sure if anybody else in the room has been through a breakup, but I have. Hopefully there's no divorcees in the room. We're touching on a hot button there. But real estate deals are like another relationship in life. There's some things you gotta watch out for. So make sure you know them, like them, and trust them. It's very important. Knowing them that well isn't as important as the other 2 things here. You gotta like them and you gotta trust them. That they're gonna do their part of the deal and that you're gonna be able to get along over the long term. And make sure that you've got the same goals for the project now and in the future. You don't want to say we're gonna hold this property for 10 years and then we're gonna refinance it and then we're gonna buy 2 more properties. If after 6 years the market takes a dip, your partner gets panicked, and now they want to cash out. that's not going to suit your goals, and you're going to potentially have a dispute. So you want to make sure that what you're going to do now, what you're going to do in the future with that project, is very well understood between the partners in the project. So always have a plan B in real estate, joint venture-wise, or even personally. Always have a second exit strategy. You don't want to say, I'm going to do this with this project, I'm going to renovate this property and sell it for X, and the market takes a dive and you can't sell it for X. You better have a plan B where you're going to do rent to own, or you're going to do agreement for sale, or something else to make sure you're going to still make profit on that property. You're not stuck with this property that you can't sell, and you can't rent it out for enough to cover its costs. So make sure everybody in the partnership is okay with plan A, is also okay with plan B, because that might happen. So make sure you get everything in writing, even if it's your friend, even if it's your brother, especially if it's your family even. Make sure you get everything in writing. Deals done with a handshake and a smile. I know Yark's going to disagree with me when I say this, but doing deals with a handshake and a smile is a way you can get yourself into trouble. Make sure you're both happy with the division of labor. Again, at 50%. If you're happy with 50%, awesome, it's easy to understand. But if you're also happy with 30, that's great too. Have a clearly defined scope of work, so what you're going to do, detail the project. This is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do it, this is how long we're going to hold it for. Have all that stuff detailed very clearly, and make sure you've got a process to do what changes. If the market tips, this is what we're going to do plan B, this is what we're going to do plan C if things really go south. Make sure you've got a process to deal with that, so you don't end up arguing when something comes up. Have a clearly defined method to deal with disputes. You should have that documented. So we've got a 4-person partnership. Are we going to vote? Does one person have more say than the other? You have to make sure you've got a process to deal with those disputes when they come up, and make sure that's documented in your contracts. And always have that stuff done by a lawyer, and make sure it's done provincial law from provincial law, because each province is a little bit different how real estate law is written. So you want to make sure if you're doing a deal with somebody in Montreal, it's written where the property is, if it's in Alberta, if it's in Vancouver, wherever it's going to be. Again, respect that guy or gal who's got a certificate on the wall. They went to school for a really long time. I think they probably deserve it. So register your interest in the property on title. So you're going to register that joint venture agreement on title as a caveat against that property, which gives you protection if something goes wrong with that joint venture agreement, and then you have a better recourse in court. Or you might have a mortgage if you're the person that's going on title. And that's one thing I like to touch on. Not everybody needs to go on title. Because again, every property you're on title for, it reduces your credit worthiness. So you might not want to do that. Not every partner needs to go on title. So an example of great joint venture partnership, I like to practice if I teach people. I'm currently searching for a renovation project right here in Calgary with the following structure. I'm putting in part of the renovation costs, and I'm paying those fees up front for the private financing. I'm sourcing that private financing as well. I'm going to be managing a renovation because it's kind of my gig. I've done that a lot. So I'm bringing the experience to the table, like Michael said earlier. So the second partner is funding the balance of those renovations. He's just a cash guy. He wants to set it and forget it. I'm going to put in this money and make a return. Simple. He doesn't need to be involved in the project. And the final person, they're putting in the down payment, source private financing. So the project we're going to do, $350,000 or less. I know it's going to be tough in Calgary, but trust me, they're out there. We're going to put 25% down because we want those fees to be a little bit lower. A little bit lower interest rate. Renovation costs, we're going to do $50K or less. We want to be in and out real quick. We're going to be doing that basic to maybe low to mid renovation. Our renovation is going to take about 1 to 2 months. We've got a big crew of guys who are going to go in there. They're going to do it. We're not going to do any work with ourselves because I still want to, quite frankly. And the profit out of that's going to be about 30 to 50K. And again, I'm really happy getting $10,000 profit in a property that I do, as opposed to waiting to save up the money to get the property later on. Because the more money I make over a short period of time, that's a better thing for me. So that's going to be split 3 ways. It's 33.33% split for all 3 partners. So it's easy to understand everybody what they're bringing to the table on what they're going to get out of there. So this brings together the 3 elements of your common renovation project. Somebody's going to qualify. Somebody's going to pay for the renovation costs. And somebody's going to put in the down payment funds. This doesn't just apply to renovations. This applies to any project you're going to do. You've got to take care of these same 3 things. And you can have renovations on a rental property just as easy. So the amount of deals you can execute in a year really is only limited by your imagination and your ability to work with joint venture partners to structure those deals so that it works good for everybody. And that's kind of an art of its own. That's some of the things that we help people with when